Come one and all for round two. Round two. This time with a microphone. Chris Courtney here, new Pragmatic. Feedback loop. Uh, Boy, some days we stumble out of the gate and we never quite get our feet. But that's okay. You just kind of stick at it, and eventually you will find your way. A lot of stuff here in the loop today. We've got let's see here, Luigi. We've got James. We've got Katie. Rebecca's got questions related to it appears a CrossFit site. This is Rebecca's situation with CrossFit is interesting because this is where having a contract is really important. Having an agreement for what the deliverables are is really important. Rebecca's got clients who are pushing back on various aspects, and this is where an agreement on what the deliverables are and what the payment schedule is going to be up front is vital to avoid bad blood later. And I was specifically thinking about your project, Rebecca, and the issue that I always have with a WordPress or a Webflow is that it's a bit of a black box, in that there's not a lot you can do aside from the plugins and whatnot that you have to deal with. There's not a lot that you can do to control the issues that you run into along the way, particularly when the ball keeps moving with a client. They brought several things to you that I believe played a role in slowing your site down. The big thing that I would suggest doing, you were talking about speed. I would get a lazy loader on it immediately, to ensure that only what's showing in the view is loading. That should speed up the site significantly. You want to be able to use those lighthouse tests to be able to show them, here's how the numbers have moved. It is in fact faster. You also want to encourage them to pay for better hosting. The site is only going to go as fast as the hosting provider is providing resources for it. So if they're on like the lowest tier of hosting, it's obviously going to load pretty slow. If they were on a higher tier, it would load faster. But caching, you've already went down that rabbit hole, and it did significantly improve it. Lazy loading would be my next suggestion, and then circling back on hosting. I think that those three things together should get you across the finish line here. My other thought was this, and this sounds nuts, but what they presented to you doesn't really take advantage of WordPress. They're not blogging, and these are questions that you discovered later, but they're not blogging. They don't have anything that's utilizing Live Translate or anything. They're not using the scheduler. They're not using many of the things that you would use WordPress for. So that being said, this is where just a static site build would have made a lot more sense for them. And this site is pretty simple. It's a navigation. It's a header. It's a hero unit. It's like a 3-column design below that. I think the most complicated parts of it are like, the drop down, for the coach's text, and then the foreign language, what they ended up using with WordPress was just like you make a second copy of the page and you enter the Hebrew version of the text. So they're not utilizing WordPress. So they're paying they're paying up front all the costs for using WordPress. The site's a little slower and whatnot, but they're not getting they're not utilizing or leveraging any of the benefits. So when I look at that, I go, well, this should have just been like a flat 2 or 3 page site. They're not getting anything out of it beyond that. So I would go the path of lazy load and asking them to improve their hosting, and then my default in my hip pocket would be, now that one thing is you don't have to guess what the design is anymore because you've kind of hacked your way to it. But just building it in HTML and shipping it, I can guarantee it's going to load fast then because you've ripped out all the guts of WordPress. I don't necessarily want you to have to go that route, but up front, understanding what they're going to use the site for. Again, if they're not using it for scheduling, if they're not using it for blogging, I'm not sure why they're on WordPress. But these are the things that we discover along the way. You certainly don't need to move it to like a Webflow, and that's not going to improve anything. But I do think lazy loading should give you a significant boost in performance. So I would go that way next. I'm going to jump in here to look at Katie's work. If you missed it a moment ago, and I'm so sorry, I've just got a bunch of things here. If you missed it, boy, there's just too many screens open. I am sincerely apologetic for all the junk that I have open here. Let's go over here and look at Katie's Webflow. So Katie, you've gone through and you're not Webflow, your user flows. You've gone through and you've got some user flows together. These are your initial attempts at user flows. And one of the things that I would point out, and again, we recorded this just a second ago, but I did not have a microphone at the time. One of the things I would point out here is that these flows are verbose, okay? They've got a lot of verbiage in here. We need to truncate this so that we really focus on the actions. And some of the problem, again, I wasn't sitting on your shoulder while you were putting these together, but I believe that some of the issue here is that one, it's verbose, so the shapes are getting a little odd, but two, you have steps here that aren't necessarily where decisions are being made. And it's like you're missing a step in one spot, but you have too many in another. And it's ending up with these lines that kind of move forward, but yet they move back. And it's like you don't necessarily have a place to land when, say, an error happens. Like this error occurs when logging into Facebook. So I'm going to go back to logging into Facebook. I'm not necessarily going to go back to choosing whether I'm logging into email or Facebook. And when I went through and kind of looked at this as well. So here, I kind of did the same thing. Create an account, email or Facebook, selects Facebook, authenticates, account created. If authentication is good, account creating. If authentication is bad, it fails, and we go back to selects Facebook. So here I'm just circling back, and I've said, hey, I got to re-enter my password because I'm on the Facebook screen. Email is the same thing. Here it's email. I'm going to create a password. I'm verifying the password. If that verification works, I've created the account. If not, I'm going to alert the user, and I'm going to go back to create password, and I'm going to it's going to have an alert there that says, hey, that didn't work. When we look at yours, the problem here is the steps don't necessarily, aren't necessarily lining up. So types in email address, great. Creates password of choice and verifies it. So the verification and the creates password are separate. Here, create password, verify password. So verification is yes, no. Create password is I'm just doing entry. And when I verify, I can then go and success or fail. And here you've basically said creates choice and verifies, and then there's a passwords match, which really is unnecessary because you just need to go to logs into a new account. If it's successful, and like here's the check mark. If it's not successful, like this all needs to lead back to a creates password, and then the verification step leads back. So again, some of this is just you feeling your way for the first time on the steps that are necessary in doing some of these processes, and that will come with time. That's where these discussions happen. It's like, okay, so how do I do this process? Well, I want you to take a first stab at it, and then let's talk through what the process is. The next thing that I wanted to look at was the menu page, which you've got right here. And already you're doing a better job, I believe. Like user selected created account. We know it's not going to be anybody but the user, so just create an account. Here you said begin scanning the website for find a meal option. So what I really want is I just want to know where they're at. They're on the home page. Okay? Selects menu page, and then here are the menu page options, and here's all meals category and search. All right? We go back over here. You've got selects menu tab. User can look through all meals, choose category or search. What I really want to do here is I want to just I want to just come out of the side for all of these. Okay. I want to leave these top two anchors open for things that need to loop back in, which you have on both sides. But right now they're fighting because the options are coming out of the top and bottom, when in fact they could all just come out of the side. And when something does fail, or here I've got user abandons all meals, we can just go right back to the menu page. Okay, they're on the menu page, and now I'm looking at the options. So, I'm not going to go back to the choices. I'm going to go back to the page before I make the choices. And this is a fairly common thing when making user flows. This is your first stab at it. You're putting a lot of information in here. Overall, it's it is focused in that this is all about the meal options. Okay, so that's good. The bad here is just pacing. Okay, there's not a lot beyond that to worry about, and there's some issues that you just can't avoid. So if the user bails out here in the middle, well, it's in the middle, so of course it's going to have to cross over to come back. I get that. That happens. Okay. All we're trying to do is avoid where these lines are just riding together but going in two separate directions. Okay. So a little bit of cleanup there, and I think you'll be fine. And then you can continue moving on through your other flows. You've got 3 here, but I think 5 is the minimum you want to have, because these are going to map directly to the things that you're going to test in your prototype. Speaking of prototypes, James has gone in deep on his priority guides, and the priority guides are all the information that's going to end up in the wireframes and the prototype. And I really think you've done a really good job here, James, in jumping through and identifying all the nuances that are going to need to be present in your site. The good news is you've done the hard work of, okay, I'm going to do wave 1, wave 2, wave 3, continually adding to the structure of the information that you are presenting. This initial page, and then secondary page and third page. Each one layers in more information, gets more detailed. It's very easy to follow through. Hey, you've thought through, this is what my sections are going to be. Then you begin to layer in information, and then you begin to add more detail. I think that's all very well done. The only thing, and as I look through here, there's some like menu dish page. Instead of going 3-column with menu items, I would encourage you to go 2, just so you get the benefit of the visuals when they come. As we're going through, I think all of this is really solid work. I did change that from cart page to confirmation page a little earlier in the earlier version of this. But the one thing I want to encourage you to look out for, and Katie made a note in her journal, which I thought was really smart. Katie said, I got to be careful not to go too detailed. I got to be careful not to get into the weeds and overcomplicate this. You've got a lot of content here. I would make sure to utilize a story map that you've already created to keep yourself on track. There's a lot. You have a lot of opportunity here to drive this in the ditch and just work on it for a month without getting any actionable feedback from an end user. So for you, James, the real key here is stay focused. Pay attention. Go back to your flows. Katie's working through her flows now. Make sure your flows are being addressed in what you're building, and don't go too far beyond. Okay, unless it's a situation where the prototype just doesn't work without adding a screen here and a screen there, and that you can talk to Eve or Luigi or Kara. They all had screens that were like, wow, this is kind of a partial prototype. It doesn't hook together without X. And that's fine. You literally have to have that screen for it to connect, and that's okay. But you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 views here. Okay, I don't necessarily think you're going to need all 11 to build a prototype. So I just want to keep you aware of that. I think your approach here is good, and I would encourage you to move forward, but keep a careful eye on your story map. Make sure that you're aware when you're going beyond what you set out to do. Luigi, let's see here. Where do we want to start? So you're in information design, and information design, and I believe color as well. Information design for you, I think, is going really well, particularly when it comes to identifying the principles in action. For those of you, and most of you are not in the interface design part of the program. So part 1 of this information design exercise is just identifying the laws that are in use. So proximity, similarity, symmetry, continuity are the ones that we cover in the chapter. And there's a lot happening even just right here. By proximity, this information is separated away from that information, is separated from this information. There's units of information that are working together. Similarity, this is connecting together and holds together as a unit apart from this. Symmetry, you can see a lot of symmetry here as well. It's being very evenly presented. And I'll come back here to your insight in a bit, Luigi. Here, this has a lot going on. There's proximity in that the nav bar is separated away from the garments here. Similarity, obviously, the garments are holding together through both similarity and symmetry. We've got continuity, and I want to take a peek at that in a bit. I do know that you have all is underlined here, so that's telling us what we're looking at, and I'm guessing that if I clicked on if I clicked on sporting, that this arrangement of information would change. So that gives me some continuity to predict what's going to happen, which is really important for a user. A user has to be able to see what's coming up. They got to be able to predict when I hit this button or link. What should I expect to occur? Over here we have proximity, we have similarity, we have symmetry, like straight down the middle. So I think that you've done a good job there. And here, proximity again is an action. Similarity, there is clear symmetry on this page. So you've done a good job there. It's on the actual implementation of constraints that I was a little more concerned. And this part of it is from a sheer editing perspective. From a sheer editing perspective, and the weekend album here was down here. I gave you 3 albums and units of information with each out of order, specifically so that you would have to do some matching of information. You wouldn't be able to just grab content and throw it in. Unfortunately, we've grabbed content and we've thrown it in. So we got tripped up there. Some of the information should have been edited out. And in each case, we've kind of crammed as much as we could into the space. And one thing I want to pay attention to is like some of the size of the typography. If we look at this, this is like 8. This is 6. The smallest we should really be focusing on, and I'm going to hop over here to, here's an example just from the Figma community on iOS. And if I hop in here to the search bar, you'll see the search bar is 17. This timestamp is 12. And this is like the smallest type I can find on the screen. So when we hop over here and we see 6, we got to know that that's too small. And I took the liberty to kind of rethink what these really could be. And I've only edited out part of the information. I could make an argument that all of this information, like I can make an argument that really it should be this, and I should go up larger with it. Okay, I've decided to leave in, progressive rock in the release date, but even then, this is still 12. I haven't really gone up with anything yet, but it's the marrying together of the actual content that goes together, while also while also editing. Okay, same thing down here. So initially you had the metric information here. I've edited this down significantly just to kind of give me a clean line all the way around. There was nothing in the assignment that said replicate iTunes. There was nothing in the assignment that said center all the type. So I've just chosen to do this, edit down the content so that I can see specifically, what the album is, who made it, how long it is, when it was released. That works. The key here for you is edit appropriately. Like, take the right content, put it together, and then edit it down, and then put it onto the screen so that you have an opportunity that it has an opportunity to be displayed at a size that can be useful to people. And again, I showed this a bit earlier. If you go over to the community and you just search, iOS, there's tons of examples of iOS GUIs that are out there that you could use as for comparative analysis. It doesn't mean that you have to copy like the design of any of these things. I didn't copy the design of anything. I just said, okay, what's the associated size I should be looking for, and from just this, I said, okay, well, 13 is as small as I should be looking. Let's edit this so that that's basically the bottom. All right, so and that allows us to get rid of these 6 and 8 pixel sizes. Over here on Figma, you've done a good job of identifying like where the margins would be. The challenge here for Luigi was adding a section of tutorial videos to the Figma website. The question here I have is, well, I know who that guy is, the bald guy. Most people on the Figma site might not. And what I really need is I need a label introducing what this section is. Every other section, like prototyping, collaboration, design, every other section has some sort of label introducing what's going on. This one does not. So, I don't necessarily know that the date is important. If you pull the date off and you put a label on it, I think it would work. But right now, it's just like I've added this information, but I feel like I'm missing something. So sorry. And what I'm missing is I'm missing some sort of introduction telling me what this section's about. Okay, so we got to layer that in as well. So you're pretty good over here. I need another stab at constraints, and I need an enhancement. I need an enhancement on information in context. When we jump over to color, one of the things that I love about Color Oracle is it makes it really easy to come in and kind of see what's happening. So the assignment here is to identify what the color deficiency is that's present, and I use Color Oracle just to take over my entire machine. And you said that it's tritanopia. I'm not a physician, surprise. But when we do that, you can see that it turns both sides of exercise 1 the same color, which means that is what's actually happened. This is what the cat in the box page looks like to somebody who has this vision deficiency. And this is what happens when blue goes away. And it's weird. You would think that, wait, blue goes away. This looks blue. Yes, but something is occurring that basically makes the yellows disappear. So here, it might be that yellow is disappearing. I've seen it explained a few different times. It's the yellow going away, or it's the green going away, or it's the blue going away. Regardless of what's going away, this is showing you what it's like for that person. So, protanopia, let's do that. And sure enough, now this is exactly the same. And this means red has gone away. And this one I can see, this one I get. Because when I look at this, I'm like, oh yeah, the red went away. And when we click back on it, you can see the red comes right back in. So this one's easier for me to understand and kind of lock my head around. Is like, oh, okay, so when the red goes away, everything dulls down significantly and kind of goes a lot more grayscale. This one's supposed to be protanopia as well, so let's see what happens here. And sure enough, it definitely doesn't. And boy, you get a real sense that what that's like for people, because it's very dull by comparison. And then this is deuteranopia, and denuter, and sure enough, and this is where green has gone away. And again, there's a little bit of color, but you can kind of imagine what it's like to drive around. No green. I can't see green. So 5% of all males can't see springtime. That's crazy. But it gives you a better idea of what people are really dealing with. So when we come over, you've this part, and I chose this specifically because this is the actual website, okay? And I mimicked the website to give us an idea of what was going to be necessary to fix the cat in the box site. Which, by the way, cat in the box, genius. I want a cat now, so I can buy that little chalet or the box of milk. Looks like a good time. Um, but these are the boxes. There this is the site, and you've done a good job of addressing this real issue. And it's so funny. Like this was an actual site, and it's like, wow, their site isn't legible for people with vision impairments at all. Same thing here. The first site, and this was again based off the Incredible site. It failed all accessibility tests, and when we redesigned it, you can kind of see what it was like here. It wasn't this that was the problem. It was all this stuff down here. So good job there. That's a marked improvement. Don't get too cute with yourselves with your gray type. Don't do it. People can't read it. All right, I'm off my high horse. Let's see what you got here. So essentially, this is supposed to be making it easier for people to see what's happening, regardless of whether they have a vision impairment or not. So the potato burrito meal, if we look at it over here, it's been grayed out. Well, a lot of stuff in the world gets grayed out if I have a vision impairment. So what Luigi's done is he's struck through the potato burrito meal, and then it says meal currently available. I'm not sure if you've seen that anywhere, Luigi, but that is what I've been seeing happen on menus at some of the larger restaurant establishments. They've been smart, and when digital menus started happening, you started seeing people taking advantage of the fact that they could update things on the fly, and instead of graying it out or dulling it down, a lot of people are adding the strike through and then saying not available right now, and you just said meal currently unavailable. So I think that's really smart. But good job there. And over here, this is where I would I'm not a fan of throwing this into the circle. I think that the circle itself is an issue. There's a billion different ways that you could do this, but I would encourage you to look at what would happen if we did just the big check mark and we got rid of this and just said, all right, so this is going to be black, and it's just a big check mark until you get to an area down here. So I like the concept that you have saying, oh, it's going to be a check mark, but I don't necessarily think that putting it inside of a circle makes it easier to see. So it's not just about color, it's about, just do I have good vision? So I think that there's some other things. Also, I could see coming into, so right now you've got, this says preparing, you've got a box around it. I'm wondering, is an underline, a really thick underline, a better idea there? Do I go with a bigger circle around this? I think there's some options. There are some options that are there, but the big one that stuck out for me was, is there something more that we can do with these circles? Do we have to have the circles? And that's really the question I have for you, Luigi. Are we thinking it's a good idea? Are you carrying it far enough? Can we carry it further? And that's what I'd like to see from you. What can we do to carry this concept further? This is a nice first step, but I'm not just concerned with color. I'm also concerned with vision impairment. I want to be able to see what that is, and it's pretty small right now. So it's a good first step. But yeah, that's my 2 cents on it. So I'm going to kick this back over to Luigi and Katie and James. Katie, obviously, I know you're working through your flows, refinement. James, I know you're moving into microcopy. So control the scale at which you're working. Make sure that you're not going too far. Um, James, you've done a really good job of identifying the principles and the color deficiencies. I'm looking for a higher level of editing on your information design. Um, and I think if you can get to the point where you're saying, oh, yep, this is going out and that's going out, and oh, that doesn't make any sense. This other information aligns together. I think you're going to be at a better spot. Right now, right now your implementation is haphazard. Your ability to recognize what's going on is spot on, but your implementation is haphazard, and we need to work on that. And I know we got a call later on that. And then back to you, Rebecca. I would look at lazy loading for WordPress as the next speed bump that you can get out of that system. And then, you know, I I gotta say, make sure you're utilizing Lighthouse to produce a actionable number that you can say it's moved from here to here, um, because without that you're going to have issues, I'm afraid, with this client, and it all stems back to the first agreement. Like, what are we building? What are we building? What are the deliverables? And when is it done? And and unfortunately, that's that's the chasm that you've got to cross now. Is the when is it done? If this was in writing at the beginning, it might be a different scenario right now. Um, but this is how you grow through those first projects. All right. There are mistakes that you'll make on every project, and this is one of those. Not everything is a design. Not everything in design is a design growth. Some of it is just like management of people, and I think that that's the real challenge that you have ahead of you. Like the speed of the site, yeah, there are ways that it can be improved, but now it's frankly more of managing the people that you're working with. Okay. Um, all right. I'm Chris Courtney, New Pragmatic. It's the end of the feedback loop for Monday. I'll see you.